The ultimate slab of beef, a 7-bone rib roast.
Here we have a 20.7 pounder. We make it every year for Christmas as a special treat, and my job is to not screw it up since it's pretty much a car payment. So first thing we're going to do is rinse it off, get all that excess blood and muck and fluck off of there. And we're going to dry it up and prep it.
Towards the end of this video, we're actually going to take a slice of this rib roast and visually dissect it, explaining the different layers and the different colors from the outside all the way in.
I literally have a pan here barely big enough to hold this monster of a beast. So we rinsed it off. We're going to dry it. They did, look at the job they did trimming out the bones here. Now these bones that they removed, there's still a little bit of meat in between them. And if you go to the grocery store, that's what you'll see as beef rib bones or beef backbones. All right, we're going to flip it over. Let me kind of go over what we did. So we wet aged it. What does that mean? That just basically means let it sit in the cryovac pack for a little bit of an extended period of time and kind of starts to help break down the construct of the beef. So we just took it out of the package, and now we're gonna do a dry brine for 2 days, and that too is gonna not only pull moisture out of the meat, but it's also gonna put moisture back into the meat, and when that moisture goes back into the meat, it will carry the salt with it. And that process, as you may have heard, is called osmosis. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flip this around because it'll be easier to see of what we're gonna do. If we see any thick parts of fat, which there's a few of them here, you can trim those off. Because what's gonna happen is the fat that renders off of this, we're actually gonna put into our finishing sauce. I'll be honest with you, I'm not gonna go much more than this because we also want a nice crisp on the crust. Let me see what this looks like inside here. Right, that's a pretty big layer of fat. You know what I'm gonna do after kind of scoping this out? And this is something that you never know what you're gonna run into. I think I'm gonna take off a decent coating here of this fat along the edge. So that being done, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take our knife, and we're gonna basically put a hole down in. We're gonna twist, and we're gonna drop a little bit of salt in there. We're gonna do that about every square inch along the roast beast. And what that'll do is the salt will penetrate in, and after a couple of days of dry brining, there's a little bit of a gap that'll be at the top here. That'll allow the salt to melt in, and again, it'll take the juices that combine with the salt and it'll spread it out into the meat deep down inside rather than just on the outside. Is this going to make a huge difference? Probably not, but you know, we purchased this from BJ's, so we're not talking about prime beef here. So every little thing we can do to help this take on some extra flavor, extra taste, extra moisture. We're going to flip this back over and we're going to give this good salting. We're going to go on the edge and we're going to basically cover it in salt. We're not going to be shy about it. And one other thing salting is going to do as well, especially on the meat, where the meat's exposed, it's going to form a pellicle, and that pellicle is going to capture or grab onto the smoke in the smoker to give it more of a dark, deep mahogany color, as well as take on some of that good clean smoke that we're going to generate. Because if I haven't mentioned it by now, this bad boy is going to get put in the smoker. Been running the smoker at about 200, 225 for a couple of hours. Once it hits an internal of about 125, we don't want to undercook our rib roast. About 125, we are going to bring it inside and we're going to blast it in the oven at 450 or 500 degrees. There it is, salted, scored, barely fitting on this cookie tray. 20.7 pounds. Gonna go into the fridge as is. We're gonna brine it for 2 days, and we'll be back when we get ready to put it in the smoker.
There she sits, all seasoned, 2 days dry aging, 5 days wet aging, ready for the smoker. All right, it's time to hit the smoker. Open her up. We're running about 225. And here we go. In she goes, baby. In she goes. All right. See you later. All right, here we are after about 4 hours. That's looking pretty unbelievable. All right, we're going to pull it out, wrap it up, let it rest a bit, and then blast it at 450 degrees in the oven. We got the roast. It's been resting. We're at about 133, which is about perfect. So we're going to very carefully open it up. Now we're going to take our roasted garlic, thyme, rosemary, some olive oil, some Irish butter. We're just going to pour it on top. And we're going to pop this puppy back in the oven at 450 for about 10 or 15 minutes. Get a good crust, not overcook it. And then let it rest again. In she goes. All right, let's see what it looks like.
Okay, you know what?
It is Christmas dinner. Oh, look at that. Oh my. Holy cow. Wow. Wow. Oh. Whoa.
Any words to the camera?
Woo. Speechless. Cutting into it with our new Coulini. I'm just going to cut it here and then put it on the cutting board. Oh, look at that. Wow. Oh, my. Thank you, sir. Whew. Holy cow. Okay, so how did this turn out? This was probably one of the most, if not the most, flavorful rib roasts we've ever made. Several factors attributed to this. Number one was the crust. The olive oil and rosemary and thyme slather we put on right before blasting it just gave it an amazing flavor and texture. Number two, the smoking process. The meat actually had somewhat of a charred, grilled, woodsy flavor in the background. Number three, the au jus. The au jus combined with the slather that we put on the rib roast formed an unbelievable sauce for the top. And the separation of the fat and oil along with the au jus from the meat created a beautiful, beautiful, picturesque sauce. And the last component was the hidden one. It was the butter of the gods that was laid underneath the steak. That added an incredible rich flavor to go with the saltiness, the beefiness, and the background smokiness of this rib roast. The combinations were absolutely fantastic. It's kind of like the grand finale of a fireworks display. For those that want to stick around to do some dissecting of a rib roast, here we go. Okay, so let's start with the outside layer right here. As you can see, there's a nice sheen on this outside layer, and the blasting in the oven at the end when we reverse seared it really created an amazing crust. And if you remember as well at the beginning of the video, we did dry brine this for 48 hours, and I really think that helped form a nice crust as it drew some of the moisture out of the fat cap that was on top, and that allowed that between the smoking and the blasting in the oven at the end to form a really nice crust that was amazing. The next layer is a slight layer of pink, you'll notice here, and then that's followed by a darker layer of kind of brownish color, and then the inside itself is a nice pink color. This muscle here is called the spinalis, and it's also called the cap. This outside part of the rib roast is the most prized piece as it is marbled with incredible flavor and fat. So when you think of a ribeye, that's the piece that you bite into first, and it's just unforgettable. But what I found interesting was this pink layer on the outside, and then what looks like a little bit overcooked on the inside, and then the pink in the center. So I believe what I did was, I think when I smoked it, I smoked it to about 131 degrees, and I let it rest maybe for about an hour. The temperature didn't drop down that much because it's such a big piece of meat, so it retains its heat quite well. And when I blasted it in the oven at 450, I think the temperature probably rose above 135, and that caused this exterior brownish color to form. Basically, it looks like an overcooked piece of steak. Now, what I found interesting was this red layer, this thin red layer on the outside. So the first impression is, how can something be overcooked on the outside and yet show up pink and then brown and then pink again? So my theory is that this outside pink layer was actually caused from the smoking process, and the overcooking of the meat did not disturb that colorization that the smoking process produced. I don't know if some of the salt penetration at the top attributed to some of this brown color here on the spinalis, but so my thought is outside layer here, smoke ring, inside layer here where the spinalis is the just overcooking it a little, and then the inside of the rib roast from that point on is looking really good. And that being said, I would greatly appreciate if you could provide your input in the comment section below as to why you think the different layers of the rib roast came out in these different colors.